Hello, and welcome to the Awakening Philosophy channel. My name is Jed, and we are discovering what it means to be a philosopher, what philosophy is exactly, why we should care about it, and we're reading a text called the Parmenides as an example of philosophy. To recover what we have gone over in the last to go over what we've looked at in the last two read-alongs. We have been discussing the logos as the essential element of philosophy that distinguishes philosophy from all other spiritual traditions, the logos. We don't quite yet know what it means, but that's part of the game. We are discovering the logos. And as much as we can discover it, we're using it as we go wherever we can. Why? Because one of the qualities of the logos is it is the understandable and knowable structure and pattern of reality. And it's that through which mind communicates to us for our benefit. Now, these are some big words that we haven't quite got into the nitty-gritty on yet, but we have talked about how the logos is a kind of understanding, and it's an understanding that evolves us, develops us as human beings as we go through the process of discovering it. And so, we are reading a text of somebody else going through that process, someone by the name of Socrates. We talked about how the process of awakening philosophy through awakening ourselves to the logos is akin to the hero's journey. The stages are in the hero's quest. In many mythologies, many stories, we talked about Harry Potter, we talked about Katniss from the Hunger Games, and Luke Skywalker. All of these sorts of characters go through stages of development that are put into story. As philosophers, we can come to recognize that that is a shadow of the real story, our human story, for us, personally. We are going through our own hero's journey, and that journey is the philosophical quest. We talked about what's involved in that quest, how it's like leveling up a video game character in a lot of ways. We talked about how we needed to develop certain kinds of seeing by recognizing aspects of the logos. So we talked about how the logos has a positive and a negative reflection. So we need to look for those sorts of things in our world, in the texts that we read especially. Also in our dreams, but we'll go into dreams another time. But dreams are very important because it communicates the logos to us as well. So as we learn to see and use and become awakened to the logos, we can use it in all areas of our life, and one area you can apply it to is your dreams. The reflection on your dreams to discover those two qualities that we're discovering in the text that we're reading. What are they? What is this particular message, the particular logos, and what is the method of discovering the logos itself? The functioning and the thing itself. Its functioning and its nature. Two levels that we look at. So that's dreams. That's one area that you can apply it to in your life. And another area you can apply it to is the area we are applying it to in this video series. A text written from a philosopher who is writing from and through the logos, someone named Plato, an ancient Greek philosopher. Fantastic figure, student of the great Socrates, lived at around 300 BC, started the first universities in the West, the Academy in Athens. The beginning of a golden age in human history. A golden age that was sadly stopped short because of what we recognize. We can apply the logos to understanding history as well. We have the positive, we have the logos, and we have its negative shadow. We talked about logos leading to our destiny, and its shadow, the pathologos, leading to our fate, which is negative, our anti-destiny, that play out in the narrative of our life, in our drama, in our dreams, in our relationships, in our issues, by repeating cycles of failure that happen if we do not address the pathologos and go on the quest to discover the logos. Last time we talked about how that is the call to action. No, it wasn't the call to action. What was it? The invitation. In the hero's journey, there's a special name for that. It's the call to the quest. And this is why we should care about philosophy. It is the quest that can uncover our destiny, and also we apply the logos to the negative, addressing and escaping our fate. So equally, we can apply the logos to history to recognize that there was a great participation in the logos with Plato, student of Socrates, founder of the Academy. But what's important to recognize that when we have the presence of a high level of participation in the logos, as human beings, we have the counterattack, or the pathologos, the negative shadow or reflection or distortion of the logos. Look for these pairs, the positive and its negative shadow. That's one of the aspects of the logos we want to recognize, take with us in our inventory. We're like collecting clues as we go along. We're like Sherlock Holmes, collecting clues to solve the greatest puzzle of them all. And like a character in a film or a game, as we do that, we can level up our skills. In particular, our way of seeing and recognizing and being attuned to things in the logos that are communicating to us. So one such vision that we can develop is this duad vision. Recognize the logos, recognize its pathologos counterattack. Look at the object, look at its shadow. Recognize these patterns, start to notice them. Another thing we talked about is the triad vision. Look for triads, look for groups of three that have two extremes and a middle term that can connect them. We talked about how we're experiencing a kind of triad when we are listening to Pythagoras' story through Antiphon relayed to us through Adimantus. And we talked about how that was a weird way of writing a story. And the story itself that our friend Pythagoras was there to witness was between Socrates, Zeno, and Parmenides, another triad. The significance of triads we might not see for a while, but it's good to be aware of them. Take note, because that's what we're doing. We're discovering the logos. The text that we're reading is the Parmenides, and so that will be the avenue through which we can discover the logos, and also we can see the logos of the text itself, the message of the text. Let's look at our notes from last time. Here we go. You'll notice I no longer have a blackboard. it didn't make sense to me to have a blackboard out in space. So we have this futuristic Voy Boy, what are they called? Pip Boys. Pip Boys in Fallout. It's our monitor, it's our display. It's very scientific, very state of the art. You can tell by the border. So here is the how the narrative is being communicated to us. We have a conversation between our friend Socrates, Zeno, Parmenides. We talked about how Socrates arrived for some questions from Zeno. Zeno had written some essays. Socrates and his friends had come across them. Socrates asked him a question straight off the bat about his first logos and his first hypothesis and wants to know some things about it. And Pythagoras is our friend who was there. Let's circle some things. We have Pythagoras who was there listening in. He told Antiphon, and this is us, we're with Cephalus. We meet Adimantos and we ask about Antiphon, and then he's going to tell us what he heard from Pythagoras. Pretty complex, pretty complicated for a way of writing. Very curious, right? Last time we talked about one of the aspects of the logos we need to be aware of. Key words, key terms. How dark am I? Key terms. We collect the key terms as we go along. One of the names for the key terms in the logos are selfers. Why do we call them selfers? Well, because the word for self in the Greek is altos. And we keep an eye out. Our good friend Juan Balboa, who did the translation, often helps us out by writing altos in purple. We recognize that one of the self triad applies to this word because there is a particular reading of self, it, an honorific referring to the highest or the idea or the excellence of a thing, and of course we have the ultimate term, the self, which is the ultimate term in philosophy and the quest of the Greek philosophers to know thyself, which was a saying written above the oracle at Delphi that everyone would see as you walked in. It's what they recognized was worth guiding their entire life. We might say, "How are you?" or "Sup, bro?" They would say, "Know thyself." Maybe. So, certain terms that have excellence about them, that have a eternal or metaphysical existence, we can call them self terms. They're the ones we're looking for. Oh, and you might have got yourself a question from last time. Are there terms that fall in the category of this one here? If these guys are the selfer terms, what about these? Are there some terms that fall into this category? If you have that question, good for you. Hold on to it. Last time we talked about one of the key selfer terms and the key terms of philosophy itself. and also tragically one of the most mistranslated terms in how philosophy is taught nowadays. That is eidos or idea, which sounds like idea, and that's how we often translate them. A concept, idea, but it is not a concept. It means to behold. This is what's sometimes called one of the great betrayals in philosophy, that a word that is a self term that refers to the selfers themselves. You could say another word for self term is an idea term, which means to behold, or one of the qualities or aspects of the spiritual experience. What do we mean by spiritual? Simply what you encounter when your spirit can separate from your physical senses and experience that which has to exist before the physical world as the principles for the physical world, and as it's prior to the physical world, prior to space and time. We can say that they are, if they're prior to time, they are eternal, outside of time, or timeless. And prior to space, they are deathless, you could say. So they are eternal and immortal. Eternal and immortal. This might sound like the Greek gods. This is one of the reasons why these idea terms, selfa terms of the logos are personified, represented with the Greek gods by certain people like Plato and Socrates. Not everyone. If you want to know what Zeus means, and you go into a book where someone has made a compilation of everyone's stories about Zeus, you're going to get a real hodgepodge. Because not everyone will use Zeus as a character the same way. But if you're looking to the Platonic philosophers, to Plato and his ilk, they use them specifically to represent these ideas that we're interested in. These are the ones we're after. These are like the level bosses on each stage. We want to understand and know directly these things that we are able to behold with our mind. Last time we talked about, or maybe the time before, we talked about the word for beholding is knowledge, or rather it's translated in knowledge. Knowledge is the closest we have in English, but the Greek word is nous. We talked about how it's important to have both at our fingertips. Because we speak English, we're probably going to use the word knowledge to talk with each other. But it's not the same way we normally think knowledge. We think about knowledge. It's different. It means specifically to behold that which is eternal, immortal, can only be experienced through the eye of the mind. We talked about the name of the eye of the mind is ousia. That sense that once awakened can turn around and know itself. Not just know the mind that is particular to your body, in your soul, but mind itself. That which is shared with all minds. So we talked about a double helix kind of thing. A spiral that turns about upon itself but circles upwards. We level up. We turn about and reflect and we level up. What we're doing here is we are right now turning about on what we've learned, what we've thought about, what we've pondered. Reflecting on it with our minds. We're participating in ousia at one level. The more we do that, we can awaken our higher levels. Just like in a game. I'm going to use video games as a metaphor because they're fantastic metaphors. It's almost as though good game creators are tapping into a universal source of insight in making the games. Or perhaps it's just what the audience responded to. Gamers responded to certain ideas that maybe resonated with their soul at some level. However it came to be, it's a fantastic kind of metaphor to use. So, one such way of looking at this is, in certain games, if you do a thing over and over, let's say you keep jumping, like in Elder Scrolls, your jump skill will increase. And you'll get better and better, and you'll unlock higher levels of that acrobatics skill or athletics skill because you keep jumping. And hey, even though it just starts with jumping on things, maybe you'll get hover or fly or glide or double jump or things that operate on a higher level of the same quality. Likewise, we are reflecting. We are engaging in ousia. The more we do that, the more we're going to be able to level up to awaken higher levels of ousia. And as philosophers, our goal is to awaken the ousia that can turn upon the mind to behold itself. The things that you encounter in that beholding are called the ideas. They are not concepts. One of the reasons why this sort of reflection, sharing these sort of ideas is so important is it's taught in schools as ideas. Most schools, not all schools, most of them think in terms of concepts. When we hear philosophers talk, wherever you hear them, maybe on a podcast, they're talking about their concepts. They're often arguing about their concepts, what they believe to be the case. And I mean, sometimes that can be fun, but sometimes you might wonder, well, hang on a second, what about truth? Is it just a matter of opinion? Is it just a matter of perspective? And some philosophers are good at arguing certain concepts because they've read a lot of books or because they can use big words, but they don't seem to be solving problems. They don't seem to be getting to some mutual conclusion. They're rehashing the same arguments over and over again. Why? Well, we talked about the idea of relativism. This way of thinking that it's all relative to opinions or perspective or concepts is called relativism. In philosophy, we want to escape relativism and wonder about, hang on a second, is everything relative? Because when my car breaks down, I don't really believe that. Because I want to go to someone who doesn't have opinions, someone who has understanding, someone who actually knows how to fix my car. Not only that, if I go to 10 different mechanics, they're going to fix my car in the same way. So there seems to be an understanding that's even higher than concepts, that's universal. You may even wonder, how far does that go? Can we apply that principle to understanding the highest ideas? Not just how your car works, but how your soul works, how reality works, how your purpose works. Philosophy says, good for you. And yes, you can. But because it's beholding, it's not something you get as a belief. It's something you need to experience yourself. So the question that we have as adventurers, as philosophers, as the ones who want to reach that treasure, do it ourselves, is, how do we do that? That's the logos. That's the philosophical quest. That's this journey. That's being this kind of adventurer. Taking on the noblest quest, being on the greatest game. And the things that you can behold, we call ideas. We talked about that last time. We talked about, here we go. We talked about what do we behold? The aspects of pure being, as they are things that are principles and existences that are needed to create physical things. They have a name that means before meta, physics, or the physical, metaphysical. So we call that the metaphysical realm. And there should be an A in the word realm. R-E-A-L-M. The metaphysical realm. And we talked about one way of describing that experience of beholding the metaphysical realm all at once as a oneness. Yes, it has aspects that you could distinguish using understanding, but it's an all-at-once experience, often called the brilliant light of pure being. We talked about how light, bringing things to the light, coming to light, is an interesting and significant metaphor that we need to keep our eyes open for. Oh, don't want to delete the A. Here we go. There we go. And so, bringing that into our text, into our text. Here we go. We have Socrates talking about the ideas right here and making this same point we just made. I'm not interested in physical examples of things like stones and wood and any such particulars. I'm interested in, that's not a good color to highlight it here. Make it yellow. I'm interested in the selves. Remember we talked about selves for the Greeks meaning the honorific or the realm of the being, such as likeness and unlikeness. We talked about that being a kind of self a term, a paired self a term. Likeness and unlikeness, many in one, rest and motion. I want to know about those ideas. And I want someone who can show how they can be blended together and separated apart. How you can say that in the brilliant light of being, in the ideas themselves, you can separate these different aspects, but also blend them together and say that they're one. If it's a oneness, if you can say it's all one, show me. That's what Socrates is asking. Socrates is asking the very same question we're asking. Hey, in our culture, we are in manyness. Remember, relativism. There are many different opinions. There are many different perspectives. There are many different beliefs. We want to know about the one, the truth. And we talked about how, well, we saw when we read how what Zeno was doing was writing his work, his text, through a love of contention. He was a bit angry, maybe. He wanted to pick, maybe he was picking some fights, and not a love of honor. In order to provide assistance to the logos of Parmenides Parmenides is saying, hey, what really exists is actually one. Reality is one. And when he put this idea forward and he wrote poems about this, many people made fun of him and said, look at all the absurd things that follow, you crazy kook, if you say all is one. And so Zeno wrote some text saying, hang on a second, even more hilarious things follow. Even more ridiculous and opposite results follow if you say that all is many. So it's many or one. These guys say it's one. Reality is one. Now we have a question. What does he mean by is? The all is one. Now here it just says ton, one. And here it says, oh, how's my Greek? One is. Now, we can ask a question. Is he saying, put this into your list of questions. Is he saying that one belongs to being, the honorific, being? Is that what's one? These two things? Or is he saying, when he uses the word is he talking about the self? Normally in philosophy, we want to know what the honorific, what's in the metaphysical realm, what's the thing that you can experience and know directly. Is that one? Or is he talking about this one? That's a question that I have. And maybe you can pick it up too as we read. We did recognize last time that he started by talking about the logos of Parmenides right here, but then he went on to say, I was providing assistance to the logos of Parmenides against those who try their hand at comically representing self. We had a question, what's he mean by self? By comically representing it? Is it the lowest? Particular? Against those who try their hand at comically representing it by asserting that if one is, many ridiculous and opposite things, results happen to the self logos. He introduces the idea of self logos. That should be interesting to you. Why? We're after the self. That's the highest term, to know thyself. We talk about, thumbs up. We talked about using the logos to get here, to get there. Well, apparently there is such a thing called the self logos, tying self and logos together, meaning we may be in luck. Maybe there is that path. There is such a thing as a logos or path or rational, understandable, knowable method through reflection and using our mind, using our words, using our questions, using our conversation to reaching the self. Maybe such a thing exists. If Zeno is talking about it and he's saying Parmenides was writing about it, was Parmenides the sort of guy to waste his time writing about things that are not real? I don't think so. So, there is something to do with the self-logos, something to do with it being one, and not many, even though one and many were self-er terms. So hey, Got some balloons there. Yeah. So hey, if it's a self-er term, one and many, then it at least applies to the honorific, to the ideas. But do one and many both apply to the self of the self logos? I don't know. It sounds like there's some contention about that. Parmenides saying it's just one. But one and many are both... Puzzles. Let's keep going. So, that's what Zeno was writing about. Making fun of the people who are making fun of Parmenides. Making fun of the people who say that all is many and not one. Which is saying all is one. Maybe the word all isn't really there. Is one. Looking at the text, we saw it in the Greek. Is one. One is. We have the one is. We have a question. What exactly is meant by is? Is he referring to what is eternally in the metaphysical as the beholding, as eidos, or is he referring to something higher? What kind of is? That's our question, because Parmenides is saying it is one, not many. If you make fun of me, Zeno here will make fun of you back. Socrates says, hey, I'm not interested in... I said, well, I don't understand how you can say it's all one. It is one because there are certain things that we say is, like likeness and unlikeness, rest and motion. These are the things that we, in our culture, that keep in mind, we're reawakening and understanding that has kind of been left from our culture. They recognize that there are certain things called ideas that are beyond concepts, that are eternal and immortal, that are knowable. They recognize that they use the word exist to refer to them. So things that exist, like likeness and unlikeness, they're different. They're opposites. How can they be one? I don't get that. He said, I'm not talking about the physical world, of course. Wood and stones and such thing. Or my body. Yes, I have many because I have I have right hand and a left hand. That's more than one. That's many. But also I'm one because I'm one person and you're one person. That's not one. That's not anything wonderful. You're not speaking about anything wonderful if you say that. But tell me about the ideas themselves. Ideas themselves. If someone could reveal themselves as being able to blend them together as one, but also separate them apart as themselves in themselves, as the honorific selves, as the knowable ideas, if you could do that, by the way, the things that you can say have ousia. What's ousia? The eye of the mind that can turn about and know itself. But it's also the nature of those things. How does that work? Well, when the mind turns about and knows itself, ultimately, it recognizes that. Let's write this down. It recognizes that the seer the mind that's seeing, the activity of seeing, and the object seen are all the same thing. What is the seer is mind. The activity is mind. And what you're looking at is mind. So you can say it's mind minding mind. That is ousia. Now, as adventurers, put this word in your inventory. Ousia. Why? Because we don't have it in English. Just not there. But now it is. Because we're putting it in. We have croissant. That's not English, I believe. I think it's French. But now we have ousia too. So we can do it with croissants, we can do it with ousia. What is it? Mind minding mind. So when mind recognizes itself all at once, it becomes a kind of oneness. So it can behold itself. Why is that important? Why are we talking about that right now? Well, Socrates is saying, hey, I'm interested in these ousia self. This ousia self that is woven into the ideal selves. So again, the idea selves. So that tells us about the culture. Socrates, even as a young man, has heard of such a thing called ousia. And so have we now. So we're alongside, we're one of his crew now that you're aware of ousia. You've been let in on the secret. So I'm interested in the ousia self that is woven together into the ideal selves in a manifold way. That's what I'm interested in, not stones and wood. The stuff made of ousia. And by the way, just as we demonstrated in detail about the objects seen by the faculty of sight, he's distinguishing the two. He's laying it out. Such a fantastic text to start with as beginning adventurers, as philosophers. It's really laying out something that we miss in our culture, in a lot of places, in most places, even in some places that philosophy is taught, or even Plato was taught. They miss this. Hey, we're not talking about the things that you can see with the faculty of sight. We're looking for the things seen with the faculty of ousia. And just as we saw with things that can be seen with sight, like the stones and the wood and my hands being many but also one, because I'm one person but I got many hands, one piece of wood but it's made up of many splinters. Do the same way about the ideas that we grasp by the activity of the logos. Yay. Because that's what we're doing. So Socrates is patting us on the back and saying, hey, you're on the right track, philosophers. That thing that you're after, that's not seen with the physical world. Can I do 2 thumbs up? That's not seen with the physical world, physical senses, not of the physical world. It's ousia. Of ousia. It's woven through all of the ideas have ousia woven through them. Those are the ideals, the ideal selves, the ideas that we grasp with the activity of, what are we doing right now? We're doing the activity of the logos. Yay for us. So, that's the recap from last week, from their last talks. It's bringing us up to speed. Let's jump in.